Hello Internet! In this video we're going to be creating a to-do application using React and the script of types, also known as Typescript. Ooh. Right, so to do this, the reason I'm doing this to-do list application tutorial is because it will teach you pretty much everything that's simple about React that can get you to make your own little application. So it's got calling an API, it's got doing stuff where we're calling some of the React hooks. Ooh, what's a React hook, Shane? We'll get to that. Have patience, young son. And then also, we can mess about with some of the CSS and make it look nice and pretty. So we'll do this. First thing you're going to need to do is go to the link in the doobly-doo and download the backend, because we're not going to arse about doing the backend for this. I've just written a quick, extra cheeky Node.js app. So if we can have a goosey gander at that. Or did I have it on that one? Oh, yeah, I have it over here. Okay, so if we have a look here, we'll clear that. I have some files. This simple Node.js app. Again, download this. You're going to need to install MongoDB on your computer. That should be relatively simple to do. I think you can do it with brew. If you're on a Mac, you can do brew install Mongo. But let's just have a quick look at the files in the back end. We're not going to really do anything with them. Just download them, run npm I, it will install stuff, and then you can run npm start, and that will start the back end, and it'll be all nice and all good. So, quick look at the server. Server has got some basic stuff. All it's doing is listening on port 8080, and it is importing a few modules. So I've got body parser. This is really important. Those two things here. If we don't have this, then it won't be able to read the request that we send it, so it won't work. So if you've somehow downloaded it, it doesn't have that. It needs to have those two things, the body parser. This thing calls cross-origin request. Basically, this allows us to make requests across origins, i.e. one of them's coming from localhost port 3000, one of them's coming from going to localhost port 8080. Now, this is a bad idea if you're ever going to do this in production, but for local development without Docker, it's totally fine. Chill out. The roots file, well, we have two roots that we're going to be using. One of them is to get the to-dos to do, and the other one is to complete a to-do, to say, yes, I've done this. And the other file is a database file. Now, this is where we connect to MongoDB. I should point out, this is meant so that we can just test some stuff and play around with it. So when you start the server, it's going to init the test data. Initting the test data will first delete everything from that to-dos database. It's then going to add some generic to-dos to a database, and then it does nothing else. But that means then we can actually play around with them, so we can complete the to-do. That just updates the to-do by ID. So update 1, ID, and sets the complete to 1. It completes either 0 or 1. If it's 1, then it's complete. If it's not, this find all to-do method, this just gets every to-do that's not complete. So that's really all you need to know about the cheeky little back end. Let me just do a nodemon server.js. That's also quite good. If you have nodemon, you can just run that, and when we make changes to the back end, it will automatically update. But we're not going to be making changes to the back end, so I don't really need to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's actually get started with the old React application. Okay, so I have a folder called client. In here, we're going to actually start by creating a React app. And actually, first thing you need to do, if you haven't done already, is you're going to do sudo npm i-g for global, and then install TypeScript. Again, if you haven't already installed TypeScript, you'll need to do that, and that's an easy way of doing it if you're on a Mac. So we need to actually create the React app. Luckily, Facebook, the creators of React, have provided us with a very useful tool, and this is create React app. So you can run this. We'll give it a name. I'm going to call it to do, and we want to give it a template template of TypeScript. TypeScript, because obviously we're going to be using TypeScript with this. Okay, it's going to do some stuff. It's creating the package. Ooh, look at that go. Wow. This might take some time, so I might have to actually cut this. But what this is going to do inside my client folder, it's going to create a folder called to do, and then inside there, it's going to be having all of our wonderful little TypeScript files that we need to run the React application. Ooh, is it done? It's not done yet. It's carrying on. We'll just wait for this to carry on. I might have to cut this. Oh god, it looks like it's going to take ages. I should have started this and then started talking about the server, but I didn't think about this. I didn't think this far ahead. Oh, there we go. Okay, this is working. So, this also gives us some helpful guides because we're going to be using Yarn, not npm on the front end. So we're going to be using Yarn to do stuff. So if I say install this package, we're going to be doing Yarn add whatever package we want. So one of them I think we need is at types/React. So I'm going to add that. But we can also do Yarn start. Yarn start will start as a development server. So if I quickly... do I want to make one over the side? No, let's quickly just... I can't work. That doesn't work. I don't want that there. I'll just make a new thing. This is terrible. No, I don't want to kill the pane. I want to create a new pane. There we go. Give it a name. Save that. And we'll say yarn, whatever. Back. And go to the client. And... that doesn't look right. This looks right. So now we're going to do, we can just do this, yarn start, and it's going to start, and it's going to automatically load localhost port 3000, and you can see this is what we're going to end up with, although this isn't quite finished, but this is what we have. When we've created the React application, we've done create React app, we now have a React app running. This is basically the standard template. So now this is running. We can now start editing files and it will start changing stuff. Because we're running that yarn start, it's going to automatically update things as we change things as well. So just having a goosey gander at some of the files here. We've got a source folder. This is the important one that we care about. The most important one we have at the moment is one called app.tsx. You'd be maybe wondering what the hell is TSX. Well, it stands for TypeScript XML. This is a special type of file that React has created. It is a hybrid of hybrid of HTML and TypeScript mangled into one. If you're just using JavaScript with React, you'll also have seen this file type JSX. That's JavaScript XML. So let's have a look at what this app.tsx looks like, and this is what it looks like. So in React, we have a main cheeky function. The main function is just called app, and it just returns the actual app at the moment. And you may look at all this and say, well, this looks a hell of a lot like HTML, and it is very, very close to it, but it's not. This is TSX or JSX, but we've got types available. So it's not actually HTML, even though it looks like it. So, for example, small little differences are things like we're using the phrase class name, not class. If you're used to HTML, you'd say class, then you give it a class. But in this, we're using class name and we're using camel case as well. Okay, so let's start editing some things to make this how we want it. Well, the first thing we should probably do is actually add some types, right? Because we don't actually have any types at the moment. I also want to change this. I don't want this to be a function. I want this to be a class. So we can say class app, and then we want to do this. We want to say extends, component. And I've totally spelled component wrong. We'll do that. And I've spelled component wrong again. I will type it right this time. Boom. Okay, now instead of returning something, because now we're extending a component, we're actually going to change this return gubbins to... Actually, we're not going to change this return gubbins. We're going to do this instead. We're going to say render. Render. This is a function. This is a React hook. And this React hook is something that React invokes. When it looks when it looks in the files, it goes, oh, look, there's a render thing. I know what to do with this. And this returns a React node. Okay, come down over here. Oh, what the hell am I doing? Nope. Press the wrong button again. Oh my days. Oh. Okay, that works. Cool. So we're going to return that. We're going to indent all that nicely. It's going to moan at us at the moment because it's going to be like, where's React node chain? So if we look at our yarn, it's going to be like, oh, parse it. Oh, there's an error. There's an error already, which we're expecting. But I was expecting it to say, Where's the React node? Yeah, we'll figure out what the problem is. One thing I do want to do actually, because I really don't like them and don't see the point of them, is get rid of these stupid, absolutely, completely nonsensical semicolons. There's no point for them. They have no place here. We don't need them. They're a waste of time. I hate them. I'm also going to switch to single quotes. Let's figure out why it's moaning, because it shouldn't be moaning, I don't think. Okay, there we go. It can't find component. That's more what I was looking for, because there was no syntax errors there. It was just being stupid. So we need to say React, and we need to do some destructuring and say import component from React. Okay, now if I check back at Yarn, we're going to have a look and it's going to say, oh no, I can't find React node. Look at that. I can't find React node. It's like I knew what was going to happen. So we can also import React node from React. If we go back to the client now, Yarn, sorry. Ah, look at that. It's compiled successfully. Everything is working well. That's fine. So let's just do a, we'll change this where it says edit code. If it will let me change my... Oh, hello. Okay, we'll have a look over here. Oh, it's moaning. Why is it moaning now? Shouldn't be moaning. Instance render is not a function. That sounds completely nonsense. Ah, because I've put return here, haven't I? This should be render. I even said it and typed the wrong thing. Haha, there we go. So now you can see here it says hello. Great. So we've now edited some React. Another thing to note here is that these render functions can only have a single element inside. So notice here it's got a div and the div is closed here. And then everything that's within, everything that's happening within this is within that div. If I was to do something crazy and wild and say, hello, and stick that outside of that div, watch happens. Oh no, JSX expressions must have one parent element. So we can't do that. If we wanted to do that, we would have to stick it over here somewhere inside that div, or we could also import something called a fragment. React provides this thing called a fragment. Essentially, a fragment is essentially like it's some sort of invisible div. So we don't actually need to do that. If you ever see that error where it's saying it must have one parent expression, well, you know that you've got many things when you should have one thing. So you should have one div, and inside is all the things you want to do. Otherwise, you don't need it. We don't need this. We don't need this. What else do we not need? So actually, let's just knacker off the whole thing. Keep the div. Save that. Now look at that. Nothing's there. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Let's start off by learning about interpolation. So if I create a H1 and I say I want to put some stuff in the H1, well, I want to put in, let's say, a name. How do I do that? Well, what we can do is we can use these squiggly brackets like this, squiggly brackets, and inside these squiggly brackets we can do your standard gubbins. So we can do 1 + 1, right? This will evaluate to 2, if my maths is correct. I hope it is. Oh, look at that, it says 2. So we can do basically anything we could do with JavaScript or TypeScript in these things, but typically we'll just use them to reference some variable that we have. In this case, because we're now extending component, we can have this thing called state. So state is, the data that is with a component. And we can create a little object. We can say state. And I'm going to break the rules here. I'm not going to give it a type because I don't care. I'm going to mutate this a lot. Well, not mutate this. I'm going to change this a lot as we go on. So we'll say something like, we'll give the title, right? This is actually going to be a constant. This isn't going to change. But if we do, to-dos to dominate the world, just a casual list there. Nothing shows up, of course, because in here I need to check. Oh my god. Do change your tag. There we go. And here now we can say this. So the state is part of the instance of this component, .state, and then we can say .title. And that will now evaluate to-dos to dominate the world. Wow, look at that. Isn't that interesting? So that's fine. This is okay at the moment. One thing we're going to need to do, though, is we're going to need to get some data from the extra cheeky backend. Now, the backend's running, and like I say, we've got an endpoint that's just called to-dos. So what we need to do then is we need to call that endpoint. How can we do that? That's a very good question. First thing we need to do, we need to add a new module called Axios. Yarn add Axios. It's going to do some stuff. It's going to resolve it. It's going to fetch it. Ooh, this is going to be fine. It's going to do that. This allows us to make, REST endpoint calls or REST calls or whatever. And we can now, when we load the application, we can make a REST call, a GET call to our localhost port 8080 to-dos and get our to-dos. Ooh, isn't that interesting? So what we can do here is I can do, let's think, we need to do component did mount. So component did mount is a React hook, and it is invoked by React once the component has been mounted. That's not a very good explanation. It's something that gets invoked upon building a component. It's probably the easiest way to explain what's going off here. And notice I'm going to say it's going to return a type of void. Okay, so what do we do for here? We can say axios.get, give it our endpoint. So this is localhost 8080 / to-dos. And then this returns a promise, and we can do then response. And what we need to do with the response is we need to actually set the state with the response. Ooh. Okay, so what we need to do is we can say const to-dos. And I'm not actually using types here, which is quite interesting. We will update this later on to use some types. We don't need to at the moment because we actually haven't defined the type that comes back from here yet. But we can do this. And what this has done here, this is another, I don't think this necessarily counts as a React hook, but I think it is actually. This, you notice we haven't actually defined this set state thing here. This is just part of React, it's part of the component. So when we call this set state, it's going to be like, oh, find state, and we'll add stuff to it. And we're going to add this thing called to-dos. Well, if I want to come over here, I could also add it here and just init it as nothing, just for the time being, for the simple reason that when we load, we want to make sure that everything loads correctly. If for some reason we get nothing back from this endpoint, we're going to get stuff back though. It's okay. Until we complete all of the to-dos, and then we'll get nothing back. So this should now, if I was to do this, if I did a console.log and do to-dos, and we have a look at our console in the Chrome browser. Okay, so look at the console. I'm going to turn off preserve log. It's moaning about something already. Why is it moaning? What was the error message it was giving me? Res implicitly has an any type. Okay, so we could let it have an any type if we want, or I could just give it the any type for time being. So what that means is we're essentially not giving it a type, and implicitly it's evaluated as any, and you should really do that. You should specify your types. If it carries on moaning, I'm going to instead, I need to wrap this in parentheses, and I think it should be okay. Oh, my redraw time's exceeded. Okay, I might have to just quickly close out Vim and restart this. Okay, and I'm back. Vim's being stupid for some reason, so I've got to fix that, but now I've got ugly no syntax highlighting on, so this is a pain. Okay, so we're going to quickly make this any type, and then the next thing we're going to do, because I think it's going to moan about it, well, it will moan about it, is we need to import Axios. So import Axios from Axios. There we go. Have a goosey gander. Haha, there we are. And this is now returning us stuff, but it's not actually working. If we look at the network panel, we can have a look. We should find, if I was to unpreserve the log, oh no, let's keep the log preserved, clear it and refresh the page. We should see, there we are, to-dos, we're getting nothing back. Response is empty. This means that I probably need to restart the back end, so we'll quickly do that. And we will stop that and start that again. There we go, refresh the page. And we should see, there we go. We now have to-dos that are coming through correctly. We can have a look at the console, and they are being logged correctly as well. So that's all gravy. We're actually getting what we want to get back. So now let's have a look at actually creating a first component that we're going to need. This is going to be called the to-dos component. So let's do that. So in order to do that, we are going to save the one we're in, and we're going to quickly create we need to create a folder called components. Yep, spell that correct. That's fine. And then we'll say components, and then to-do.tsx. Excellente. So what do we need to do in the to-dos.tsx file? Well, in the to-dos.tsx file, we need to first import React from React. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create what's known as a functional component. The functional component just doesn't have any state, is basically what that is. So we'll do export const to do react.fc, and then we're going to give it a type of props. Now, what are props? Because we haven't even got to this yet. Props stands for properties. It's short for properties, and these are the sort of common thing you pass to a React component, member, whatever you want to call it. So we've now defined props here, but we actually don't have anything called props. So what we can do is we can say export interface props, and we can do this. Now we want to say the props are going to contain to-dos, and this is going to be an array of, we'll say to do. We need to create a new type called to do, and we also need to give it an onSubmit. So an onSubmit is going to be a function. It's going to take some values. The values is basically just going to be an interface containing an ID, an identifier, and that's going to return nothing. So that's all we need to do there. And why did I put that there? I don't like those. Okay, so there's a few things we need to define now. We've defined the props. We need to now define the to-do. So the to-do is going to be a type. This is going to be to-do equals like this. We could also define this as an interface if we wanted to, but I just wanted to show you defining a type specifically. So this comes back from the server with an ID field, _ID, because it's generated by MongoDB. We have to have something called a to-do. That's going to be of type string, and we're also going to have the field complete. We don't actually need that field complete, and I keep putting damn things at the end. Why do I keep doing that? I don't know. And I keep deleting stuff that I shouldn't be deleting. Right. There we go. Cool. And of course, we need to define values. Now, this is not going to be exported because you don't have to export things if you don't want to. Values is just going to be a simple interface that is going to have an ID of string. Now, note here that the ID doesn't have an underscore. That's because the backend expects an ID without an underscore to come into it, but it will send us back an ID with an underscore because it's just sending it straight back from MongoDB, basically. So, let's first just make the most basic thing ever, just so that we can see something working. So to do that, we can do return and make another little return over here, make the thing closed. Why is it not coming out of exit? Oh, there we go. Cool, it's working. We can just create, let's say, just a H1 for now to do component. There we go. And then let's go back to our app. And if we go back to our app, what we need to do is we need to have a look at actually importing this to-do application, right? So we want to look at adding it and rendering it over here. So we want to render it under the H1, I think. That'll be a fair place to render it. So how do we render it? Well, what we can do, just create to-do, like that. But obviously we need to import it. So we need to say up here, because we're not exporting it as default, we need to do destructuring and say import to-do from dot components to-do, like that. And let's have a look now, see if that's rendered correctly. Oh, there's a parsing error. It's expecting some stuff because I've typed something wrong. Import React. That's not right, obviously. That needs to be from React. Oh, it's moaning. Okay, so now it's moaning because we haven't given it any props. So we need to give it some props. So in order to do that, we need to define the things that we're going to pass to it. We already have that actually partially defined. So let's let it just moan for a bit, and we'll pass it. Actually, let's not. Let's just pass it some generic stuff at the moment. So the way we can pass these, we can name the props that we want to pass it quite simply, and we can say to-dos is equal to, in this case, let's just do this. It's this state to-dos, so we're going to pass those to-dos that we've got. And then the onSubmit, we haven't defined that yet, so we could just do, we can be lazy, and we can just do something like this function here, and we'll just do that. So it basically is saying, I'm not returning anything here. That might moan about those two things. So do we want to just do a console log and do nothing? That should be fine. Okay. It's moaning because, oh, you don't put commas here. I always do that. You don't put commas here when we're defining these props. There we go. Look at that. We've now imported the to-do component. Oh, isn't that nice? So we've imported the to-do component. The next thing we're going to need to do then is let's actually create the list of things in the to-do component. So we'll come all the way back over here. We'll get rid of this H1. And instead, we're going to create an unordered list. An unordered to-do list. Ooh. Like that. And the next thing we need to do then is we need to actually take our props, our to-dos that we've been given, and turn that into a list of things to do. So to do that, we can do this. Start off by saying props.todo. Now, notice here we're not saying this.props. It's just props. The props that are passed to this particular function. To-dos.map. And then we want to say item. Whoopsie daisy. Item is of type to do. And we also want to get the index. So the second argument to the map function, if you choose to, parameter will be an index. We can use that to generate a key. I will talk about what keys are in a little while. We don't need to know too much about what they are at the moment. Let me just close this off before I forget. And at the moment, we're just going to do this. We're going to say li list item. And we'll say item.todo, like this. Close off the list item. And, if we come back, have a look here. Oh, there's a parsing error. Why is there a parsing error? Because it's expecting there to be another parentheses. That should work. Aha, there we go. Right, so look at this. We've now got our stuff back from the API. And we can look here. We've got 3 items coming back from the API. By milk, big milk, black male, Mr. Big, and by a cat. Those are the things we need to do. And they're all being rendered by React. And you can also see there is a cheeky little warning here saying each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Now, what is that? What is a unique key prop? Right. What React does is when it re-renders stuff, so when there's a change to the state of the application or, something's changed, it doesn't bother going and looking at every single thing and says, has this thing changed? Has this thing changed? It will look at the ID and go, or the key, sorry, and say, oh, well, this key's changed, so we don't need to render that key anymore. It's a more efficient way of doing things. If we don't provide a key, what it actually has to do is have to check everything, check the contents and go, oh, has this changed? I don't know. Yeah, I'm too bored. This is what's happening. That React starts moaning, basically. If we provide it a key, it can find it much easier and it will be more efficient in its re-rendering of the DOM. So let's go and do that. That's pretty simple to do. And we're going to create a little key function. You don't have to create a key function, but what I want to do is create a key function because we need to have a unique key for every child within our list. Now we're going to have many children when we get to it. So let us make a key function. We'll call it key, and we'll pass it the index. The index will be of obviously type number, and we'll pass it a type. This will be a type string, and it is going to return a string. Do this, and simply return type plus index to string. Okay, so the reason I'm passing it a type is because we're going to have a form within here. We're going to have the list item, of course. We're going to have other things with buttons, perhaps. And we can then just pass it like this. So we can say key is equal to, and then we need to have our little squiggly brackets there. And we can just say key index, and the type in this case will be li. And this is just so that each index is used once, but it's also, it's used multiple times against different types. There's just an easy way of making it a unique key, because it has to be unique across the whole thing, otherwise it's not unique, obviously. So if we were to do this now, have a look, we should see that if I refresh this page, oh, it's moaning about something else now. It shouldn't be moaning about that. The reason it's moaning is I've missed out a parentheses or a bracket again, and I've done the wrong bracket. There we go. Aha, there we go. It stopped moaning. Great. Now let's actually make this do something useful, because at the moment this is just, we can't do anything. We can't complete the to-dos. We can't do a thing. So thinking just about the to-do actual things that we need to complete now, well, what do we need to do? We need to actually have a way of completing the to-do. We need to be able to interface with the API for completing that to-do. But in terms of this to-do component, the next thing to do, oh my god, I'm not going to use the word to-do anymore. We need to actually create a form, and we need to use something called, we're going to use something called Formik to do that. So come out of Vim, yarn, add Formik. Do that. I don't need to do it. Oh no, I do need to do it. Yeah, let's do that. We'll add Formik because Formik provides us with really nice forms that we can use, and I think it's great. So we'll open add.tsx, and we'll also open to do again, and let's import from Formik. We need to import form, but also something called Formik from Formik. Excellente. Okay, coming down, looking at the list item, what I actually want to do now for the list item is, instead of having this items do in here, I want to instead do this. I want to have a button in here. This button is going to be of type submit, so we're going to say button key is going to be key index button. Yep, that's fine. And then the class name, which we haven't done any classes yet, is going to be called to-do list, I think, or to-do item. We'll do to-do item. Yeah, because it's not the list, is it? This is the new item. And then what else do we need to do? We need to give it a type. The type will be of submit. Close that off, and then within the button we need to say item dot to do, and then close the button like that. So the button's got a key. The key is now different, so it's got the same index, but it's got a different, type. And so having a look again at the application, everything should be good, but it's not, because I have missed that squiggly bracket. Have a look again. There we go. We've got some buttons now. Click the button. It does nothing. Well, that's great, isn't it? How useful is that? Well, we need to actually add the form. So coming up here, we are going to, not here, there. We are going to use Formik. So we can say Formik. And Formik is going to need a key as well, because it's within this map function. So we need to give that a key, and the key is going to be key index Formik, like this. Now, I should point out, you probably should do better key functions if you're going to use this across many things, many components, because otherwise you're going to use Formik 12 times and it won't be unique anymore. And with Formik, we can provide it with some initial values. The initial values is what's going to get submitted. Well, not going to get submitted, but if we don't change it, it will be what gets submitted. In this case, we want to actually say the ID is going to be equal to item dot underscore ID. Okay, and this just means that when we submit this, it's going to have the body ID with our ID that we want to actually sort out. The next thing we need to do, and I'm going to add it on a new line. I'm probably going to add initial values on a new line as well. We are going to have the onSubmit method. The onSubmit method, we haven't defined that yet, but what we need to do is we're going to say that's equal to squiggly brackets, and then we're going to have, within our props, remember, we have the thing called onSubmit. So we could just call props onSubmit, but that won't work properly, so we just need to say, we need to create a new function that's going to call props onSubmit. So we say props onSubmit, whoopsie daisy, and do again same thing, ID item dot underscore ID, close that, and close Formik. From there, we then need to create the function that's going to be within Formik. So it expects that we create a function that's going to have a form within inside it. That did not make a damn bit of sense. Christ. We'll bring that in. Let's just close this off before I forget. I've got to close a few things off. We'll close this. We also want to have a close off of the Formik tag here. So before we forget, Formik. There we go. And now we'll move that in a bit more. We'll create a form. So we can say form. Again, this wants a key. This key is going to be key. It's going to be this key index form. And that's all we need for that. If we then close the form off, we should be close to actually getting this to work. The only thing we've got to define is that onSubmit, because at the moment it doesn't, onSubmit will do nothing. We haven't defined it, it'll just do a console log when we click the button. And it will console log nothing in particular either. So just having a look over there, here, this looks like it's going to work. Yep, I think it's going to work, so we'll save it and have a look at Chrome. Oh, there's something gone tits up again. Parsing error, line 26. What's it moaning about? It is moaning because... Well, I don't know why it's moaning. That looks fine to me. Why are you moaning? You shouldn't be moaning. Is it moaning because key? That's fine. Initial values. Aha! Is it that? Does it want squigglies? It wants squigglies. This should have been a squiggly. It's not a squiggly. Okay. Hey! Okay, click one of the buttons. What's going to happen? It's going to console log. It should console log. I don't think the button's working correctly. Why is the button not working correctly? Because... Well, this should be working, but it's not. That's interesting. Just refresh the page there and double check that it definitely isn't working. So what should be happening there is it should be calling our method that we've defined in the props called onSubmit. But it's not doing that. So let's look at the app and we'll have a look what's gone wrong here. Let's just check and... we need to do this. We need to actually tell it what it is. So it's values. In the case of... What the hell is that? In the case of this, we can just define this interface again. I don't want to import the interface just because I don't want to import the interface. This is quicker. So now onSubmit values. And if we were to do values to the console log and then click one of these, there we go. It logs the ID of the value. So we know that now what's actually happening is that we have a function here. This thing that we've defined is in the app folder. This is getting passed to the to-dos as the value onSubmit. So if we look back at to-dos, we come over here, we've got the props that get passed to the function to do, and then down here, we reference that function and we pass into it the item ID from this list of items. So we get this particular one for this particular iteration of this map function. We pass that to on submit, and then when we click the button, so the Formik stuff kicks in here, when we click the button and submit the form, it calls this function here. So in order to get this to work, to actually do some stuff that we want it to do, we need to define a proper method, right, that's going to be in our app, right? So when we've got this Axios get, we actually probably want to do something instead with Axios post. So if we say something like complete to do, and we'll define this as a function expression. So we'll say values, and then what this is going to return is it will return a promise of void. And then we can say we'll do this. We'll put this on a new line and we'll say Axios post HTTP localhost port 8080 complete. We'll pass it in those values that we want to give it. And then we can call the then method, because this is a promise, and we'll say res any, I don't really care, and we'll say this component did mount. So why are we going to call component did mount? Well, we need to call component did mount because we want to get the latest to-dos, because now we've completed one to-do, so we want to basically reload stuff. And the easiest way to do that is just to call this component did mount. So we call component did mount. What happens then is we load all of our new to-dos. So we complete one to-do. We should now have two to-dos that are, loaded by the application. So hopefully this has all worked well, and we'll have a look now. Okay, so we've reloaded it. I've got rid of the console log when we click the button. So if I click the button now, buy milk. Ooh! No, I haven't got rid of the button. I haven't. I've forgotten one thing, and that is to actually reference the damn thing correctly. So what I need to do is we need to just knacker off all this. I could have done a better way of doing that with the old Vim. Put in here just the reference to complete to do, like that. Now, why is it moaning? It should not be moaning. Of course, it needs to be this dot complete to do, because of course this is within the component state, or the actual instance, the component. So we need to say this, even though I just typed that and somehow undid it. Try it again. I will click buy milk. What happens? Oh my god, it disappeared. It disappeared instantly, and the application was reloaded because this has now sent a message to the back end saying, by the way, complete this to do, and that's all good. So that's all worked. Now, if you were bored and you're like, oh great, I know how to do stuff now, then happy days. However, what I'm going to do next in the tutorial is go through and do a little bit of the cheeky styling, which is going to take a few seconds. It's not going to take very long, but just in case you want to make things look pretty. So we can totally do that. Let's open app.css. We are importing app.css in the app. And let's just, shall we knacker off? What should we knacker? Well, we don't need any of this. We don't need any of this. We'll knacker off all that. I'm going to keep the text line center because that's cool. Let's first create a body, and there's a certain color I'm thinking of. It's the color that it was to begin with, actually. The React app. I like that. Is it 282? I don't know. I don't think it really matters a great deal. It's only going to be slightly off. We'll do that for the background color. We'll have the text color be a garish yellow, because, why not? That'll be that. That's the body. And then we want to make the H1 font size. We'll make that 3EM. And then H1, H2, H3. Oh, no, wait. Which is the yellow? I don't remember. That. Okay, that one we put at the top is not yellow. It's a completely different colour. It's a greyish colour. This one's the yellow one I was thinking of. What is it? He's going to find. There we go. D94A semicolon. I don't like the semicolons. Then we want to get rid of, you might have noticed in the application, it's got these ugly bullets. Oh, what are they doing there? We don't want them. They're horrible. So we'll get rid of those. By doing this, we'll say list style type none. And then padding will be 0 pixels. And then we want to have our class to do item. So we've seen how we actually reference this. We have the class name attribute, not class, just class name. And I want to have no border on the buttons. I want to have a background color of the exact same one as we did earlier. Probably should use a variable for that, but what's the point? We'll just type it out again. Do. That's the wrong one. I'm going to steal it. But I actually want both of these. I'm going to nick them both. Get rid of that. We can do font weight. We'll do 600. Font size for the buttons. We'll make it, I don't know, 2EM. And then that should be all good. Excellente, look at that. That looks cool now. Now we can click on these things and they will be completed. And we have a nice little to-do app that's styled nicely. So click that, that's complete. Click that, that's complete. Refresh the page. Nothing comes back because we've completed everything. If you did want to get them back, as I mentioned, we can go back to our server, do a cheeky little restart on that. It will reload everything and add everything correctly. So we reload this and everything's back. The test data, you can play around with it. Okay, cool. So if you have any questions, because it's about the end of the tutorial now, leave them in the doobly-doo. I'll try and answer them as quickly as possible. Yes, thank you very much for watching. Arrivederci, au revoir, ta-ta for now, cheerio, bye-bye, auf Wiedersehen, pet, bye-bye.